the Good Girl Podcast, and I am Cameo King, your host. The Good Girl Podcast is a podcast of women's confessions about our flaws, faith, femininity, and culture. Everything is on the table. Happy Thanksgiving, y'all. I don't know when you're listening to this, if you're listening to it today on Wednesday, or if you are listening on Thursday, or just sometime later in the week, depending on your schedule. So I hope you are had, or will have a safe Thanksgiving that's full of love. And I think today's conversation, it will shift your perspective on the remainder of the year. And if you don't know already, the Good Girl Podcast, our goal is to destigmatize the messy process of life. We go through a lot. We are in bondage to a lot of things we aren't even aware of. And we do a lot of unlearning and a lot of becoming. And I think one of the key processes of that is being honest about where you are, sharing your gutted truth. And that is the only way, in my humble opinion, based on what I've seen and what I've experienced and the breakthroughs we've had on this podcast, to really get you to that next level. And we do that through conversations. We do that through people sharing their truths, and I call those confessions. So every week we have someone on sharing a confession. And this week will be no different. Actually talking about a confession I think our culture has picked up, but we'll hop into that later. And I know you guys know, when I have these conversations, I have them with the best of the best, in my humble opinion, again. But I'm always excited to bring my homie, the magnificent, the wonderful Dani Elmore aboard. Welcome, Dani. Welcome, Dani.
What up, good people? What's good? Glad to be back in the cyberspace building.
In the building. But a little bit about Dani. Dani is a licensed mental health therapist. She has her own practice, the Refresh Wellness Center, where she offers teletherapy services. So you can call in and get the same high quality service of seeing a mental health therapist. And she's been doing this prior to the pandemic. So Dani has foresight, insight, vision. She knows what's up. And she also contracts with a couple of hospitals in Dallas doing psychiatric assessments. So we got the best of the best up in her. And also, she's a blessing to the world. She's also been a great friend. Hey, girl, hey.
What about your friends? Stand their ground. Will they let you down? Yeah.
Oh.
Just right to the chorus. Yeah.
You know that's how I felt I was singing that one too with my soul. I felt I was.
Felt it with your soul. I felt it for you. What about your friend?
I did. But so onto this topic. This year has been extremely trying for the world. It's been trying for, and we know this. I don't want to rehash this. We all know 2020 has been definitely. Listen, it's no words for 2020. I think somebody described it as a pack of black jelly beans. My bad to those who really enjoy black jelly beans, but that ain't. No, they said a pack of black jelly beans for dinner every day. That's I think how someone described it. But anyway, nonetheless, we are here, and So we understand the larger picture of 2020 and how a lot of people may be feeling because of what's happening in the world, what's happening in our communities. But I think one thing we don't deal with a lot is what is happening within us because of these things, right? So what's happening on the personal level. So Dani, I have a question. What is something that you've seen or that maybe you've implemented this year, something that has surprised you about yourself? Before we get into the bigger topic about yourself.
Having personal boundaries with myself and making sure that I am minding my business. And when I talk about minding my business, I'm talking about minding the things that get me to my desired life outcomes. And so, what am I investing time and energy into? What am I listening to? What type of inputs do I have that are affecting my output? And so I have been very intentional about having boundaries with myself where I don't just allow myself to idly listen to anything that's negative, in particular, the news. The news was the one thing that I cut back here in May, I think. And it was either May or June. And since I've cut the news, I've noticed like I have been less anxious about things. I am not as tuned in and as checked in to all the fear mongering that's going on, although I am acutely aware because I go in and out of a hospital 5 to 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. And so I am aware that the COVID numbers are at an all-time high nationwide, even higher than when the whole country was in quarantine, and people are going about their lives as if, COVID is not happening, people aren't dying and such. And so I've just been practicing more self-care, and it has improved my mental health and improved my productivity for what it is that I am called to do. So yeah, minding my business and having good boundaries with myself. Those are the things that I've been doing. What have you been doing?
I honestly, it's the latter, minding my business. Like, and I think I started the year with this, and I think I reiterated this in one of the podcasts. When I say minding my business, I think we typically use that as a projection onto someone else. But when I say minding my business, I'm talking about a declarative statement that I am responsible for carrying out. And so my business that I'm minding is the Good Girl podcast. Am I doing everything I can do to reach the people I'm supposed to reach? Am I looking for, as Eric Thomas says, there are inches all around us. So what's the inch that I'm missing when it comes to my business that can make a huge difference in the long run? Am I taking care of my business when it comes to my nonprofit, Great Glam and Guts? That is my business that I need to be minding, period. Nothing else, nothing more. Yeah, that's it. And loving on my family, loving on myself. And that is my business. And anything else, kind of what you said, being aware of what you're entertaining. Because even when I'm entertaining, I have to say, like, is that my business? I think my mama checked me one time because I think I told her, this was going to be what I was going to focus on for this year. And she was like, is that your business, Cameo? I was like, don't be coming for me, mama. Don't be coming for me, mama. And it wasn't my business, and it just made me truly realize how much time and how much energy and how much and the emotion that we put into things that are not our responsibility. We get into other people's fights, emotional fights, that again it's not our responsibility. Yes, you want to be there for your friend, but that's not your responsibility. So minding our business has been one thing clearly that has worked for both of us, that has kept us afloat, kept us focused during all of the chaos of 2020. But what we're dealing with today is the larger picture, is what's happening culturally, and what, again, we have accepted, what we have confessed, what we have repeated, proclaimed, and held the banner up for 2020. And I want to make sure we fully understand this project, so it doesn't or this conversation, so it doesn't become a reprimand. And again, I'm dealing with what we have been confessing culturally and collectively. And I want to lay a quick foundation of the types of confessions. And so I think that there are 3 types of confessions. The first one, I think it's when we acknowledge the truth in our feelings, our perspective, or our soul. And so sometimes that type of confession doesn't necessarily have to be true for everyone else, but it's definitely true for the person that is sharing the confession, right? It can be about maybe how you dislike someone, that is your truth, or how you experienced a situation, and that is your perspective, but it doesn't necessarily have to be true for everyone else, but it's definitely true for you. The other confession type is a factual confession. And so I talked about, how you can experience a situation. My background, again, I have a background in journalism, and we've been taught that it's not just 2 sides to the story. It's like thousands of sides to one story. But our goal is always to hit the center and find the truth and find the facts. And so I think that there is a factual confession as well. Like, what happened? Not what was your perspective, but what exactly happened. And so we deal solely with facts and not in perception in the factual confession. And then the last confession is the truth in your values, or for me, the truth in your faith. So for example, when I think of that type of confession, it's something bigger than me. It's something outside of me. It's a guiding principle. And so for me in my faith, I'm like, do I really believe that all things are going to work together for the good of those who love God and who are called according to God's purpose? Do I believe that? Do I believe that I serve a good God, a God who wants good things for me? Do I believe that God will withhold no good thing for me? Like, do I believe these things? That is a confession, a truth about your values, about your guiding principles, and for me, about your faith. And so I shared those three confessions because I think that they are all important, and they are all necessary. And in this conversation, because I don't want to dismiss what I'm going to share, I think culturally we have definitely been confessing number one, and it is necessary, it is needed. This is not a reprimand, but I think we have to be aware too of what that does. And as a culture, essentially for 2020, we have canceled 2020. We've said things like throw the entire 2020 away. We've consistently said, I hate it here. We've consistently want to do away with everything that has happened in 2020. And I say this, I get it for right reason. This is the truth in how you feel in your perspective and things this has been a rough year culturally, right? But what I want to do in this conversation is challenge that perspective. But we also have to be mindful of our words during this time and how our words affect our psyche.
I think the thing for me is that popular culture sayings get people in a place where they repetitively say things that I don't feel like they really mean.
Yeah.
And so, it's kind of like, when people are laughing or they think things are funny, they say I'm dead or I'm dying. I've been guilty of saying, I'm dying laughing. Or I'm crying laughing, or when people say I'm screaming but you're not actually screaming, or when people say throw the whole person away, throw the whole year away, cancel and that's because throw the whole whatever away is a popular culture saying. I'm dead is a popular culture saying. Like, I hate it here is a popular culture saying. And so it's like, oh, whatever is hot, that's what I'm saying right now. It's the blank for me, that's the new popular culture saying as well. And so it's just, people get on board with whatever is trendy to say. And sometimes that's to their detriment. For me, I am a person who even is careful about the type of music that I listen to on repeat, because I understand that repetitious information informs your thoughts, behaviors, and your beliefs. And so I may be able to admire like the vocal abilities. Oh, honey, Jasmine Sullivan's Pick Up Your Feelings.
Oh.
That girl.
Listen,
girl.
I don't know where she was running to because
Baby.
She ran all over
that song.
Listen.
That her and her background singer's vocals, nobody came to play. Okay. Listen, but as much as I love her voice, I cannot listen to her music because it is depressing, and it is all, most of the songs that I've heard have been about heartbreak and stuff like that. And it's just not there. Those aren't like, it's not a mindset that I want to ascribe to. And here's why. Years ago, I used to listen to Mary J. Blige on repeat. I always had to have Mary playing in the car, in the house. Like, used to love me. Baby, Mary was depressed, and so was I listening to Mary. Okay. Like this was the late 90s, early 2000s. And, somebody asked, there were two instances where someone asked me, was I depressed? And both times Mary J was playing. And they were very depressing songs. And it was, and I wasn't really checked in or tuned in. And so it just was just really alarming for me. And so this whole idea that people repeat, these different sayings, they become self-fulfilling prophecies. And I don't think people realize that. Like people like, oh, that's ironic. This person was singing about this and now those are their real life issues. Or, oh, I really believe in the power of confession. And I really believe in, paying attention to what your words manifest, because what it does is change your reticular activating system to shut out everything else aside from what you've been confessing and what's been on repeat for you.
Yeah.
And so those words become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so I just think we need to be careful about canceling everything. And then the other thing is, like, 2020 has had, like every other year, has had some very horrible things happen in life. But we wouldn't be who we are if we just erased every adverse experience in our life. Like, it's very unfortunate that people have died and lost their lives to COVID. People were dying and losing their lives to flu. We weren't covering it like we are covering COVID. People were dying to other things. And COVID is out of control, and we need what we need. We need divine intervention. We need, vaccine, whatever it is that we're going to get as far as regiments. Like, but do I want to throw the year away? No. Did COVID force us to go back to the basics of something? Yes. Did COVID help to remind us that we are all in the same boat because it's an equal opportunity offender? It doesn't care if you are rich, if you are poor, if you are Black, if you are white. It does not care. COVID is an equal opportunity offender in that anybody can catch COVID. And yes, it does affect people disproportionately who have compromised immune systems and pre-existing health conditions. And so, yes, it is more prevalent in the Black community in that regard. However, the point that I'm making is to say, throw the whole year away and that continue to be this trendy confession is egregious, because there are a lot of people who have thrived during this time. And if people are honest, despite everything that has gone on, many of the same people who have experienced some hardship during this time also experienced some very good things in 2020. And I definitely wouldn't want to do away with even the learnings of 2020.
Yeah.
And so this is the time to lean in to the learnings of what's happening so that we can use this information moving forward to affect positive change toward desired outcomes.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear that we are not making light in whatsoever of the inexplicable, insurmountable frustrations, egregious actions that have come with 2020 that we have never seen. In terms of the administration, in terms of the rate of infection of COVID, in terms of the number of deaths connected to the number and the rate of deaths connected to one outbreak. And also the compounding issues in terms of like the educational system. And that people are literally in this moment globally just trying to survive. Survive in their skin, their Black skin, survive in terms of their health, and some people fighting for their right to exist. This year has been a year for the books, right? It has definitely revealed some things to some people. Some folks been knew this has been happening, but it definitely has opened up our eyes as a country to our decaying soul, right? The decaying soul of America. And so I get the sentiments of the I hate it here and throw 2020 away. But the truth is, this was not the beginning. You know, this is the result of centuries of crap, right? Centuries of mismanagement, centuries of dehumanization, centuries of disenfranchisement, centuries of just poor treatment of humankind. This is the result. I don't want to go as far as saying this is the tipping point. I wish it was, but I don't know what tomorrow's going to hold. And I'm not that bold to say what tomorrow is or isn't going to be and that this is the worst of the worst. Because heck, in 2021, we could be wishing and praying for 2020. I don't know what's around the corner, and I'm not going to put myself in that seat. But with all that being said, after I said all that heavy stuff, y'all, right? After I said all that heavy stuff, I really want to challenge our perspective on 2020. That is the goal of this conversation. I want to challenge. We still have December. We got a whole month left, right? I want to challenge our perspective on 2020. And there are 4 things that I want us to think about as we have the remaining, it's actually 5 weeks. I'll say about 5 weeks left, right? For me, one is, again, what 2020 has done, what Danielle alluded to, that 2020 has sincerely opened our eyes, hence the name 2020. We can really see now to the soul of not just America, but of this world, to what our systems are, what they were built on and what they really do and what they value. Do they value human life or do they value profit? Do they value the truth or do they value something that is just appeasing to them momentarily? Do they really have a value system? These type of things. But because our system has been revealed to the majority, I think this really puts us in a place where we can uproot and demolish our systems and structures that have not been serving us well.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you brought that up because we had, a conversation, I don't know, yesterday, I think, where you brought up the education system. And I'm just like, yeah, we're in a place now where they can use things from 2020 to do a complete overhaul on the education system and a complete overhaul on the healthcare system, which have both been failing us, a complete overhaul on the criminal justice system and police reform. All of these systems have not been serving us. And like, it took a global pandemic to break our economy down and to break all systems and to force people into doing things differently, to say, hey, maybe some of this stuff that we're doing we can do without, especially since everyone is being forced to work remotely. There are different things that we can do now. I know that creates other issues with regard to global economy and people being able to compete for jobs, who aren't even in the country with people who are stateside. However, there are a lot of things that have not been serving the human race that are to our detriment. And we are in a very unique and critical time where we can say, okay, enough. This is the perfect time to cancel it off. Let's just rebuild it all. Let's just start over, because guess what? It all just crumbled.
Yeah.
If we keep trying to go back to life as we knew it, we're going to end up right back here. And that's what's problematic. So I think that 2020 has been doing what it needed to do, has been opening our eyes, has been revealed. It has been the year of revelation, divine revelation. Now we have a responsibility to do something with what we've learned from 2020.
Yeah. Number 2 that I think that I want to challenge our perspective on and how we're viewing 2020 and the goodness or the greatness, if you want to call it, that can come out of 2020. I think it really has allowed us to put down this idea of performing for people, things, especially our faith systems, right? And this came up for me, like we can cut out all performances. And this came up for me because I was actually reading a devotional, y'all. And I pick this up every now and then. I'm sure you guys have read it, but it's called Jesus Calling by someone named Sarah Young. And on this book, Jesus got a white hand. My Jesus is black. But it's some good stuff in this book. Some good stuff in this book. So I'm gonna read just like the first 3 lines to you guys. And the first one blew my mind because I had never heard anybody say this to me. From any, at least I'll say this, from my memory. Somebody could have said it and it just went out of my head. But the first line says, "I am pleased with you, my child." And that blew me away. That first sentence, like I've never heard those words in reference to my existence, not my performance. I'm gonna bring that in there, but my existence as a child of God. It's typically what you need to do, what you ain't doing, and reprimand, right? And so to the performance piece, it says, "Allow yourself to become fully aware of my pleasure shining upon you. You do not have to perform well in order to receive my love. In fact, a performance focus will pull you away from me towards some sort of Pharisees, right? I had that word in my vocabulary. But essentially what I'm saying is that this year has also allowed us to stop performing in church. We have been given the great opportunity and stop performing in our faith. We have been given the great opportunity to talk to God one-on-one, in a sense, on our terms, how we talk to God. We don't have to get up at 12 o'clock or whatever time you get up and go to church. Like, you can be so real with God because you don't even have a place. Because I've said this before, but I think for some of us, at least that was my testimony, that at one point in my life, church became a hindrance because I was more dependent on the Sunday service than I was on my actual conversation and one-on-one time with God. So I really think this year has allowed us, and I know I'm talking about faith, but I think it shows up in other places too, in terms of what we really desire in our life and what we really want and what's really valuable to us. You know, when we're trying to just simply live and exist and there's a civil uprising, you do sit back and self-assess and say, are these things really that important? And you stop performing for others, you stop performing for yourself, and you get down to the heart of it.
Absolutely. This time, it's really the time, an invitation for people to show up as their authentic self. You get to be 100% you. And if you are a person who's uncomfortable with doing that, this is a time to do the work so that you can get into a good place to do that. This has been a time for healing and for a time for accountability so that you don't have to continue to show up in places and overcommit and underperform because you aren't doing your work, because you aren't practicing self-care. This is a time for that. And I'm grateful for that time because it's the line of work that I'm in. And it just really excites me for other people to come into that awareness. I know some people have gone from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, keeping themselves distracted and busy and avoiding what's the reckoning that they've been needing to have with themselves, the reckoning that they've been needing to have with their loved ones. Some people have had a hard time in this season because they can't avoid anymore. Now they have to face it. And, they may or may not have the capacity or skill set to communicate the way that they need to. They may be dealing with someone who doesn't know how to communicate, and it causes their relationship to deteriorate. 2020 has demanded that we be fully present, and you have a lot of people who are wanting to go back to being numb to things, and this just isn't the time for that. This is the time to lean into that.
That's good. That's so good. And you heading right into the number three in terms of challenging our perspective. You talked about gratitude or you talked about being grateful and an aspect of self-care. And I think gratitude is something you've definitely said is an important aspect of self-care. And while again, we have all of these things happening around us, these very real, heartbreaking, um, tangible things, these frustrations, your loved ones not being here anymore. Maybe the job, your dream job that you have doesn't exist anymore. Maybe you had these glorious plans for 2020 and they didn't manifest in the way you thought they should, and you had to pivot. Or maybe you had to cancel in totality. But I want to challenge us to be grateful and literally attempt to count our blessings. Um, I don't know what your life looks like. I don't know what you may have and don't have, but it's something about an attitude of gratefulness that shifts our perspectives and allows us to see things totally differently. I woke up this morning and I literally just start thanking God for my health, you know, thanking God for the ability to work and operate in my purpose, thanking God for the ability to challenge people's thoughts, for the ability to work from home, for friendship, for being able to articulate myself, for some of the relationships in my life, even though some of my friends get on my nerves. But I'm still so very much thankful for them. Like, where would I be without them, without these things? And I know we hear this a lot in the Black church. You got a roof over your head, clothes on your back, shoes on your feet. Like, we hear that, but I don't want to take these things for granted, because if anything, this time has shown us that many of us are one paycheck away from not having a roof over our head, not having a car to drive, not having food on the table. And so I do not, and heck, the season before this, y'all talking about a paycheck away, a week away, a week away, a day away. I remember praying to God, like, look, we got about 24 hours. What you gonna do? I need some manna from the sky. And God came through. God came through. But I just don't want to, just having gratitude for these things shifts our heart, and it shifts our perspective.
Absolutely. Practicing gratitude, helps you to focus on the areas in which you are privileged.
Mm.
You know, there are a lot of things that we take for granted until we don't have access to them anymore, or we are unable to do them. You know, and so practicing gratitude every day is like, I'm grateful, that I have the ability to do these things. I'm grateful that I just woke up, you know, amid a global pandemic. I'm grateful that I have resources to take care of myself when I feel like medical professionals are failing me, and that I have the wherewithal to start taking vitamins and supplements and medicating myself and doing things to make sure that I have optimal health when I feel like people are failing me, so to speak. And that was a very real thing that I deal with, over the past week. It's like you get any type of sniffle or congestion or anything, and you're scared that it's COVID. And so, gratitude is a way that really refocuses your brain on things that are positive. And so it helps you to start, it changes your perspective about everything, and it increases your mood. It just helps your overall wellness. It puts you in a good state of mind where, it impacts how your brain functions, and overall, not just your mental health, your physical health. There are many benefits to practicing gratitude. And so I usually, with my clients, have them keep a gratitude journal. And every morning when they wake up, write down 5 things that they're grateful for. And before they go to bed at night, write down 5 things that you're grateful for, 5 different things. Sometimes it may end up being the same things, and you might find it to be hard at first, but there are plenty of things that you may not be thinking about that may stand out, that you can be grateful for.
Gratitude is everything. Shifting your mood, counting your blessings, and just showing up better and more positive in what for some of us is seemingly the worst season in our life. And with that being said, this last one is one that I am trying my best to focus on. And I think it can be extremely difficult because we as humans are taught from childhood that we have so much control over how something turns out. But the more and more I grow and I see things changing, I'm realizing how little control I have, but at the same time, how much control I have over myself. That's it, you know. So this last one, it's a simple and it's easy peasy, but in terms of applying it, not so much. But it is leaving outcomes up to God. Again, we got about 5 more weeks to until the end of the year. I don't know if this is the end of the season because the season and the year is two different things. I think a lot of us are thinking that as soon as the ball drops on 2020 or on what is it, December 31st, 2020, and we switch over to the next year, that some of our problems are going to magically disappear. Or heck, on June 20th, on Inauguration Day with the new administration, that we're going to see an immediate shift. But the truth is, like I've said before, these structures that are in place have been in place since the beginning of time. you know, the structural racism, the misogyny, the sexism, the people, the profits over people mentality, the anger, the hate, like all of these things have been in place since before these last 4 years, and another 4 years isn't going to take it away. And so when we think about what's coming next and how we can quote unquote prepare for it, and I'm not telling us not to prepare for whatever you think is coming next. But what I'm telling you is to attempt to do away with the anxiety and the worry that comes about when we are trying to control our outcomes, and to leave those outcomes literally up to God. It's almost, it's what I've heard consistently is control what you can control and leave and leave the rest up to God.
Absolutely. Um, we definitely have been taught to control, and anytime we experience trauma makes you want to try to control things because we don't want to experience anything adverse anymore. And so we go out of our way to try to, make things happen in ways that are favorable to us, that are the path of least resistance, and that are the path that we think is going to cause us to be most successful without any resistance or struggle or trauma or strain. And the reality is this: we need to put more energy into focusing on what we are specifically called to do, so that we can uh, facilitate the purpose and call that God put us here for. Knowing your role on this earth and doing everything to facilitate that is what gets us closer to, our desired life outcomes. And so if you leave those outcomes up to God and you focus on minding your business and doing what He put you on the earth to do, then be less anxious, less stressed, and you won't feel the need to be canceling everything. You won't feel the need to be worried about what's going to happen next, because the truth of the matter is you're still here right now. And as long as you're here, you have purpose to fulfill. And canceling 2020 is not going to change the purpose that you have to fulfill and whatever it is or whatever lessons there are that God has for us to learn. I don't want God to cancel anything. I want our eyes to be completely open and for us to learn once and for all so that we don't have to repeat. I want to keep everything from 2020, all of the above. What I want to know is, what are you going to do now?
What? I always wanted to sing a song, singing in my ministry, but what are you gonna do now? But I think that's a great way to challenge us. What are you gonna do now? Since your perspective on 2020 has been challenged, what are you going to do now? You can be grateful. You can leave your outcomes up to God. You cut out the performance. And you understand also what 2020 has done, the uprooting, the demolishing of systems and structures that did not serve us well. So what are you going to do now? You got 5 more weeks if you on that calendar, because 2020 isn't over. So I hope your Thanksgiving is full of love. It is full of peace. I hope you sincerely take time for yourself, whatever that looks like. If that looks like cooking a meal, if that looks like ordering pizza, I don't know. But bless you. Bless you on this Thanksgiving. And thank you for listening to the Good Girl Podcast. Look who made it to the end of the podcast. You did. You get a card. You get a card. No, but you do get something special. Thank you for rocking with us for this entire year. This definitely has been a trying year, and I hope our podcast have really added value to your life. And I hope we continue to do that through the end of the year. As you know, this Friday is Black Friday, and we definitely have some sales. And I just want to give you guys a code if you are thinking about purchasing and supporting the Good Girl Podcast. We have some new items. If you haven't checked them out, go ahead and check them out. They're really cute. I really like them. I will be rocking them. You'll see me in them on the gram. I was thinking about doing one of those videos, you know, when you jump into the shirt, you jump into the new shirt, but I hear it take you like hours, but I'm gonna try it, y'all. I'm gonna try it. But yeah, head to our page and you can see the items we have out there. But anyway, the code that you can actually start using Thursday at 6:00 is Black Friday. It's that simple, Black Friday, and you'll get free shipping on any and everything. Black Friday. It'll only work Thursday through Friday, and then we'll have another code on Saturday for Small Business Saturday. You can put in the code GOODBIZ, GOODBIZ. Again, that's GOODBIZ, GOODBIZ, for a nice little discount. But thank you so much for supporting the Good Girl Podcast, and I really want you to enjoy this Thanksgiving and enjoy this season. Thank you for listening.